joining us. Thank you. And I just want to begin by introducing to you me and my staff. So that way, if you have any questions that we can help you with, we are more than happy to do so. Increase this volume a little bit. So my name is Daisy Gomez. I'm the clerk of the council for the city of Santa Ana. That's Linda over here. She's also can help if you're bilingual, and then Norma here, also bilingual Spanish. And then we have Tran, who is helping with the presentation, and she is also bilingual Vietnamese. And this is just my direct staff. And then we have Sam back here, who's also assisting. And so we also have two translators. We have a Spanish translator back here, Nita and Cesar here for Spanish. And then we have a Vietnamese translator, Wong. And this is just in case you have any questions and you feel a little bit more comfortable asking in your own native tongue. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. Next slide, please. So I want to welcome you all and remind you that we do have printouts, pens, and also clipboards to help you complete anything. We did provide some worksheets, so that way you can complete to help us with your public input or public testimony. We also have water, coffee, and some snacks. Please help yourself. The only thing I ask is that you dispose of it or take it with you. Please don't leave it behind. So this here is the current Santa Ana ward map. This was adopted in 2018 based on the 2010 census data. And because that information is from 2010, every 10 years, we do have a census. And this map is going to be changing with the redistricting process based on the 2020 census data to take into account the population changes, interest groups, and other criteria that we're going to go through later. Under the California Fair Maps Act, also known as AB 849, the cities and counties are required to have a more robust outreach process with focus on community interest. The redistricting process is and will be very different from the previous redistricting process because we're operating under a new law. Next slide, please. So for today, we're going to be covering a few items. The first is the redistricting basics. We're also going to cover traditional redistricting principles. We're only going to cover a brief summary during today's presentation. Communities of interest and what that means. And towards the end of the presentation, we will have a mapping tool demonstration done by our demographer who we contracted with, Redistricting Partners. And then we're also going to cover a few ways for you to provide public testimony or public comments on communities of interest. Lastly, we will go over the public hearing schedule as there were a couple revisions. So first, we're going to touch on what is redistricting. Redistricting is a process of adjusting ward lines every 10 years after the release of the U.S. Census data. Every year that ends with a 0, people around the country fill out the census form that capture where they were at that point in time. Therefore, the 2020 census data will provide us with the updated population as of April 1st, 2020. Normally, the data for the census year is released in late March the following year. However, due to the pandemic and the attempt to insert citizenship questions on the census form, the data was not released until late August. For the city of Santa Ana, the final map is due to the registrar in April 2022. Local government redistricting are also going through the redistricting process, and the city of Santa Ana must also go through this process as it did in 2018 to ensure that the city council wards, also called districts, are rebalanced after the decennial census. Another thing to keep in mind, beyond creating wards of equal population, redistricting also serves to empower local communities and preserve voting rights. The purpose of having this redistricting process is about making sure there's representation and redrawing our ward boundary lines. The goals of this community workshop are these three main ones: to conduct the community outreach hearings so that the public can provide their public input, to identify communities of interest from the public input, and that information will be presented with a recommended map or maps to the city council. Next slide, please. Now we're going to touch on the traditional redistricting principles in preventing a ward from becoming a gerrymander. These are the principles that the council will have to consider when drafting and finalizing their final map. There are also a number of criteria that have been used nationally and upheld by courts. The first one is relatively equal size. When we are talking about this, we're talking about people, not citizens, using the census data. Second is contiguous, which means the wards can't hop or jump an area or neighborhood. We're going to ensure that all of our wards are in touch with one another, they're intact. Maintaining communities of interest is a concept that we will go more in depth during this presentation. This is a crucial criteria due to the Fair Maps Act. Another thing that the council can look at is it's following other local government lines, such as school district borders, boundaries, or recreation areas, or other lines that exist that the community would like to uplift or improve socially, culturally, or the like. The council can consider this while drafting the map. The last criteria is keeping the district compact. It can appear compact or functionally compacted. The compactness definition in California is to not bypass nearby or faraway population. Looking at areas around the wards you're creating and not to move your lines to grab faraway population. Another thing to consider is a ward has an odd shape or odd outline. It doesn't mean that it has been gerrymandered. It could mean that the council wants to maintain a specific community and neighborhood in one area. In this slide, it's identical to the one before. The only difference is that there's an emphasis in that red font there. It's to maintain communities of interest. Communities of interest is about remaining ourselves, that residents of the city of Santa Ana are the experts of the community. The residents are the ones that are aware of how to functionally navigate around the city. So the term communities of interest is about bringing like-minded people together for representation. It is also the building block of wards and to high criteria for the redistricting process. Some community of interest includes ethnic and language minorities and other groups. Something to remember during these redistricting workshops and process is that because we are discussing about how people navigate through the city of Santa Ana, we want to remind our residents that communities are subjective, and when we want people to remain open-ended, to be as inclusive as possible. Some of the communities covered by the Voting Rights Act are Latinos, Asians, and African Americans. Next slide, please. On this next slide, what is extremely important to remember that during the process, while communities of interest may include race, it cannot be the major factor in drawing ward boundaries. Next slide, thank you. To help you understand what you can think about when you're submitting a draft map or your testimonies or comments describing your community, we provided different areas that you can think about. These are a wide variety of things that people can come forward and give testimonies or your public comments on. Communities of interest could include historical neighborhoods, renters versus homeowners, school districts, recreational areas, cultural amenities, etc. And there's many more that's not listed on here, but these are just a few to really help you kind of identify what are the things that you think your community has the most interest in. What is like-minded about that community? What is not a community of interest? Preventing a ward from becoming a gerrymander. So the Fair Maps Act explicitly prohibits these groups from being considered as communities of interest. The first one is the political party affiliation. An example of this are individuals who give testimonies solely based on their political party affiliation. For example, Republicans, Democrats, Green Party, Independent, etc. The council is not allowed to use that testimony as consideration in community of interest input. The second is incumbents. Those are members of the council that intend to run for office in the city of Santa Ana. Similarly to political party affiliation, this cannot be considered. And the third is political candidates. For example, a testimony or a member of the public that says, I live in this area, I really want the wards to remain the same because I plan to run for council, is not a testimony that the council can use as a consideration in the community of interest input. We recognize that it is the right of the members of the public to come and share your testimonies, but it's up to the council to determine what things are allowable in order for them to do their redistricting process for their wards without violating the Fair Maps Act. Yes.
What is a gerrymander?
A gerrymander, Sophia, did you want to answer that? Oh, Sophia, are you with us? Oh, yeah. Sorry, you're not unmuted.
Okay.
Yeah, there you are.
What was the question? Sorry.
Oh, what is a gerrymander? Would you mind defining a gerrymander?
Yeah. So gerrymandering is a term that a lot of folks know about because of a map that was created over 100 years ago that benefited a specific political party. But a gerrymander is that the folks who are in charge of drawing the lines specifically draw the lines to disadvantage a particular group. You can have an incumbent gerrymander, which is means that the incumbents would draw lines specifically to benefit them. You could have a partisan gerrymander, which is common as well, or you can have a racial gerrymander. So it means drawing the lines to particularly benefit or disadvantage a group. And in California, as Daisy said, the incumbency is not an allowable factor for communities of interest in the city. And the racial and for partisan as well, it's not allowable. And for a racial gerrymander, we, as Daisy said in that slide, will not be drawing boundary lines specifically based on race unless there is a Voting Rights Act Section 2 district that we have to draw, and we will consult with legal counsel to do so. So it's to, again, try to create ward boundaries specifically to benefit or disadvantage a group. And that could mean a myriad of things. Does that kind of answer the question? I know it's helpful if there's like an example.
Thank you so much, Sophia. Yes, it did. And I did, forgive me, I forgot to introduce, this is Sophia. She's with Redistricting Partners and she's joined us. She will also be showing you how to use the mapping tool that's available on the Redistrictor website, which is also on our city website. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Continuing on. You could click on move. Okay, so political candidates. So an example of that is a member of the public says that I live in this area and I really want the wards to remain in the same area because I plan to run for council. That's not a testimony that the council can use as a consideration in the community of interest input. We recognize that it is the right of the members of the public to come and share your testimonies, but it is up to the council to determine what things are allowable in order for them to do their redistricting process for their wards without violating the Fair Maps Act. In addition to that, it's difficult to consider groups of similarly minded people who do not share a similar geographic location or are citywide. So the members of the public are always welcome to come forward and share their testimony. However, these are the three critical questions in defining your community. This is what we're looking from you. The first question is for you to help answer is, does your community have a shared culture, characteristics, or bond? A lot of us think of ourselves as being part of an ethnic group, but beyond being Latino or Asian, what are other characteristics that tie our community together? Do we shop at the similar place? Do we go to a specific park, go to a specific church together, etc.? The second is your community geographic in nature? Is this community able to be mapped? Visual maps are the most preferred as we are unable to visualize written or verbal testimonies without a visualized map or geography. We recommend that you include street boundary, neighborhood name, or specific location in such that we do not want to misinterpret your preferred map or boundaries. The third testimony is to describe your community's relationship with the jurisdiction and how it is affected by the policy decisions made by the elected officials. What this means is that to consider what are the regulations or laws that affect your community that the City of Santa Ana Council made. Think about the impacts that your community needs and the City Council can help implement by policy decisions. Again, these are three questions that will help you evaluate and determine your testimony. Is this a community of interest? So what we did was we set up a few questions to help identify, to help the public identify what may be considered a community of interest that the council should be considering. And this first question is, it's an example, a group of renters who live in downtown and they testified to the City Council. And for those that are here, if you can help by nodding yes or no if you agree to this. Do you think this is considered a community of interest group? Next slide. Correct. This group of residents can easily be mapped in a distinct area and they share a common policy interest, which can be addressed through legislation of public services. And then this second question, is this a community of interest group? Is the community geographic in nature? Is this community able to be mapped? A part of town that has a historic nature, either as a former hub of business, community, or an area that has been discriminated against through redlining or racially restricted covenants. Should the City Council prioritize this historical area when drawing a map? Next slide. Correct. Yes, historical communities and areas with historic discrimination can and should be recognized as a community of interest when drawing maps. A group of dog owners living in the suburbs banded together to push their local elected officials to put in a dog water fountain in their dog park. Would the City Council consider this a community of interest? Yes, this is a group of people in a shared geographic location who have similar needs for public services. And this can be implemented with public policy, with the City Council's policy. About this one, a statewide group for people who are fans of San Francisco Giants testify to the City Council. Is this a community of interest? Correct. No, it's not. It's important that a community of interest is distinct enough to draw on a map. This group overlaps throughout the entire state, and it's unlikely that a governing agency has any say over these issues. However, if the City of Santa Ana had implemented or had a baseball league, then that could be considered because it's more narrowed. It's a policy that the City Council can govern over. Next slide, please. So what I'd like to do now is share with you partly what you have in your packet. If you picked up a packet from us, this is a community of interest form. You can also complete it online, but if you happen to complete it today, please leave us your printout, what you have completed. It's two-sided, so make sure you complete the back side as well. We do have them available in other languages, So if you have any neighbors or other residents that you think can provide input as well, please feel free to pick up extra packets before we leave today and let us know how many you would like, and we're happy to provide that to you. We did bring extra copies. And then also want to make sure that you're aware that we also provided a map, the placemat is essentially, it's an 11 by 17 sheet, and it's two-sided, and it has the city of Santa Ana map on there. It has very high-level street boundary lines, but it's really there to help you identify or help us identify a visualized geographic area. So if you want to make sure that you're trying to identify a community of interest on the map, feel free to write on that, and then you can place a description of it at the bottom, so we understand that community of interest, what that is. Another tool that we have is called Districtor, and this is available online, and this is what Sophia is going to go over as soon as I'm done here in a moment with Districtor, and the link is there, but it's also available on our public portal, which we'll touch on in a minute. And that is also a tool that will immediately be published on the city website. Also, anything you provide to us is a public document, and we will also provide that or add it to our public portal. Excuse me. You can draw your communities of interest. So the paper maps that we printed are the long 11 by 17. And then this is what it looks like. Again, you can place your community name, your name and email. This is a way of us getting a hold of you, but remember, everything you provide to us is going to be placed on the public portal, so it will be made available to the public, and also a description of your community of interest. This is our meetings, our workshops, and today is the last day that we're having our workshop. And what I wanted to identify here is the fact that we have gone to each and every ward in the city of Santa Ana, and we're on Ward 4 now. However, if you feel that you want me to participate in any one of your other community meetings, please let us know, and we're more than happy to come out to any other neighborhood meetings, or if you feel that there's a location that I should go to get their public input, I'm more than happy to do so. And then the city, I wanted to make sure that you were aware that these are the public hearings that the city council will be having. The October 19th was the first public hearing that we had. The second one will be this upcoming Tuesday, November 2nd at 7 p.m. And it will be, again, our second public hearing, and the focus on that public hearing will be for the public to provide their input. November 15th on Monday is in red, and December 6th, because these are changes that happened at the city council meeting. And they're both special meetings held on a Monday at 5 p.m. Still will be in the city council chamber. And on November 15th is our third public hearing. What's important for you to know about that is that will be the first time you will see draft maps. December 6th will also have draft maps, the fourth public hearing. But that is also an opportunity for you to provide your public input. So I encourage you to participate. And then if you happen to know anyone who wants to participate in our second or third public hearings, we will allow, the city council is still extending their virtual participation. So they may join us by way of Zoom. That is the link there. It's also available on our website, which we will go over on our next slide, or they can call in. And that's this www.santa-ana.org/redistricting. An important note about this website is anything that's placed on there will be stored there for 10 years. By law, it has to be. And so with that, did anybody have any questions? Because I was going to give this over to Sophia so she can go ahead. Yes.
How can we contact you? You mentioned that earlier, we can reach out so like the community support to other communities. Sure, no problem. Hi, I just wanna ask how we can contact.
Should be coming on. Takes a second.
Well,
No.
okay. I just wanted to ask, how we can reach out to you so that we can invite you to take, community input from other, points.
Yeah, so after the meeting, please come see me. I will give you my information. And then I'm more than happy to connect with you, and then we can organize other meetings, absolutely.
Awesome, thank you. And one last question, when is the deadline for community map submission, for consideration for November 15th?
Well, first, we're asking as early as possible so that it can be considered in the draft. But the last day that we currently have scheduled is going to be the December 6th, the public hearing. After that meeting, there is going to be, I think it's January 18th, is going to be our next city council meeting, and that will be the final map that council will be considering. However, the council has until April 2022 to finalize everything by law. So there's an opportunity for them to say to get enough members of the public, maybe providing input that shouldn't be approved. Maybe the public doesn't agree with it, that the council can at least consider. It could be pushed back or continue to a future meeting. But the final map that council will be asked to consider to adopt will be January 18th. So for the last day for the public to really provide their input or their final map, I highly suggest will be the December 6th. But it's not written in stone, right? Because council could always change that. So just want to make sure you're aware of that.
Awesome, thank you. I guess, just to be clear, I guess a community map submission to be considered for the second public hearing for the, November 15th. I guess just to be clear, if we submit a map, let's say November, I don't know, 10th, would that still be considered for the November 15th public hearing?
How long does redistricting partners take, Sophia, to if the member of the public provide their draft maps to be considered as a community entity?
Yeah, I'll have to check in with Kimmy and Chris, but generally we're gonna need about 3 to 5 days, and then that would be also ahead of the posting rules for the city. I'm not sure, Daisy, how in advance you have to post any materials for consideration on an agenda, but because potentially we may receive 50 maps, we're going to need a couple of days to compile them and run through the data. So I'm going to say at least 3 days, 3 to 5 days, but I will double check, and we will give Daisy that number so that she can relay what it is exactly. So let me just ask, and hopefully we can get an answer right now.
Sure, no problem. So, but she's right, we do have to publish our agenda, and to make sure that that's all included, we publish the agenda by the Thursday of the Tuesday meeting, so essentially it's about 5 days. So if we can get that information before then, that would be ideal.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? If not, Sophia, whenever you're ready, you are on display.
Okay, wonderful. Sorry, just like texting that question to my boss. Okay. Okay, are you able to see my window? Great, I see some nods in this small thing. So hi, everyone. Happy Saturday. Good morning. My name is Sophia Garcia. I'm the GIS and Outreach Director for Redistricting Partners. And as we go through the process with the City of Santa Ana, you may see myself or a number of my colleagues I know that we have had other folks talking with you and presenting, so you've got the whole team here with you all. So I like to start the presentations by sharing the website and then sharing where you can find the link that Daisy was talking about to use Districtor. So this is your City of Santa Ana redistricting website, and it really is the best place to find out information on the redistricting process, up-to-date information, anything that's changed. So they have information in a number of different languages. It's a really wonderful site. And it again will have all of the draft maps, any place maps that are submitted, a timeline of locations of meetings, past agendas, the community of interest form. But if you're looking to submit a map using the online mapping tool, you're going to want to go down to the section that says submit your community of interest map and click on the link titled mapping tool. So this will take you directly to your City of Santa Ana Districtor site. And Districtor is an online mapping tool that is created out of Tufts University in Massachusetts. And it is an online mapping tool that a number of other jurisdictions across the state are utilizing. So it's really important that if you are here to submit maps for the City of Santa Ana, that you use this specific link, so that you have your homepage and all of the information specifically for the city. There's a couple of sections. So the first one is some background information on the process. We have the section to start drawing our maps, and we're going to go through both of these, the how to draw a community of interest map, and then how to draw a district-based map or ward-based map. The public gallery shows us all of the maps that have been submitted so far. So we have full draft plans and also some community of interest plans. So when you submit your map, and I'll show you how to do that, it will appear here on the public gallery. And as a note, you are able to submit multiple maps if you'd like. These are all anonymous submissions unless you specifically put your name in them. And we are also taking them as public submissions. So if you are not ready to submit your map yet, you also have the ability to submit it as a work in progress or a draft map, as you have the ability to do that down there. But again, any maps that are submitted here, we will take as public input and we will show to the council. The last section is about information about the data we're utilizing, and then some more information on the firm redistricting partners. We're going to scroll back up to start drawing a map. And again, we're going to go through both of these. They're both pretty similar, but I want to show you the slight differences. So I'm going to click on identify a community built out of block groups. And you will see the outline of the City of Santa Ana. And you will also see some of these gray geographies that are breaking up your city. So on the button, it said built out of block groups, and those are Census Geography. So Daisy went over the criteria that we're going to be using through this process. And the number one criteria is to create relatively equal ward boundaries out of utilizing the census data. And when we talk about census data, it's synonymous with census blocks. So we receive the census data at the smallest unit of geography from the Census Bureau is the census blocks. And it is not best practice in redistricting to break up or split a census block because again, that's how we receive it from the Census Bureau. And if we were to split a census block, we wouldn't then be using the true census data. So this is how we're going to look at the online maps, and any draft maps that are submitted for the council to review will also be based on census blocks. On the top left-hand corner, there is a search bar where you can input a specific location, and it will zoom into the map. There's a zoom in, a zoom out function, and then a function to orient your map pointing north. On the right-hand side will be the bulk of the usage that you will be doing. And so I'll go through all of the buttons and all the tabs. The first button is the pan tool, which is the button that you will automatically be placed on when you open up the map, and it allows you to move the map around and to zoom in and zoom out using your mouse. And as we zoom in further, you can see that we can see more street names and park names and other locations of interest. There is the paintbrush tool, which will allow you to select the census blocks, and you can also select a larger portion of census blocks by toggling this blue circle to the right. And if you want to just choose one by one, you can also do that as well. There is the erase tool, which allows you to do what it says, to erase different census blocks. And you also have the ability to have a big erase button, or again, erase a census block one by one.
So
The last, yes,
you have a question.
yes.
Maybe this is obvious, but I just wanted to ask, are the census blocks equal in population? So any census block is equal unit of population to any other census block?
So I think I hear the question is, are the census blocks equal in size?
In population.
In population? No, they're not. And you are right ahead. I was going to show there is something called the inspect tool, which is this magnifying glass. And if you hover over a census block, it will tell you the total population of that area, and then also the ethnic breakdown. So we can see this one says there's 91 people in the census block, and the one just to the right of that says there's 157 people in that census block. And again, the Census Bureau is the one that creates these geographies, and we have seen them change from the last decade. We know a lot of folks in California are really familiar with census tracts. We heard that a lot for folks who were involved in the 2020 census outreach for the hard to count communities in California. And census tracts are a larger geography. So we receive the census data in a hierarchy. The census blocks is the building basis, the smallest geography. Then it goes up to block groups and then census tracts. And we see, yeah, so that's kind of the geography. And to answer your question, no, they are not all same population. We have some census blocks that have zero population. So like the airport or a park, or very minimal population. And there's areas near the coastline that pick up parts of the water, like in Long Beach, and there's no population there. So that's a really wonderful question. Okay. So yeah, we jumped ahead, but there is that inspect tool. So again, if you hover over it, you can get that information on the specific block. So now I'm going to go back to the paintbrush and we'll show you how to use the tool. Again, this is just for example purposes. I'm not submitting a community of interest map, nor will I be submitting the ward-based map that I'll show you after this one. So we went back to the paintbrush tool, and I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger. And the ways that you can create a census or a community of interest map is you can click on the blocks one by one, or you can click and hold down your mouse to drag and pick up other census blocks. Now to add a community of interest, you click on the add another color, and the software will change the color of the community of interest. You have the ability in the community of interest tool to overlap. So here I can click portions of the blue area, and now there is a yellow area, a blue area, and a green area. Districtor understands that some areas can have multiple identities. They can serve multiple functions. And so you do have the ability to overlap communities of interest. You will not have this ability when you are creating the ward boundaries. If you don't want to overlap your community of interest, you click on this lock already drawn communities button. And now I will not be able to grab any portions of this blue area. And you can create as many communities of interest you like. There's not a limit. There will be a limit to the number of ward boundaries that you will be able to draw, and that will be 6. But when you're drawing a community of interest, you can submit as many as you'd like, and you can submit them all across the city. You're not limited to only submitting communities of interest in your neighborhood where you live. Because again, when Daisy was talking during the presentation, we know that You all are experts of your community, may visit other portions of the city or may have information of other portions of the city. And so the tool and the placement are solely based on your input and not, we don't need any census data to submit your community of interest. Okay, so I'm just going to draw another one over here. And throughout the process, when you're drawing your community interest map, you have the ability to name it. So you go to the drawing tab and we have this select, which has a drop down with these different communities of interest that we created. And right now they are named community 1, community 2, and community 3 based on the color. But let's say I want to name the yellow portion. So I click on community 2. And here I'm just going to name it something generic. And you also have a description box, which you can add information on that specific geography. You can think through those 3 questions that Daisy went through. What is bonds my community together? What's the geography of this? Why did I draw it this way? And what is this community's tie to the council? So you can add all the description in this portion. In the community of interest drawing tool, you also have the ability to add specific locations to your map. And you do that by going down to important places and clicking on this blue button that has the pin drop. And now your cursor will change to a plus and it will add a dot. And to add another specific location, you click on that blue button again, and you can add another dot, and you can continue to do that as many times as you'd like. You have the ability, similar to the colors, to pick as many specific locations as you'd like, but you'll notice that they're all red dots. So no matter if I create one specific location or 20, they're all going to be red dots. So how you're able to name those, if you're going to hover over the specific dot. So here it says new point 1, new point 3, new point 2. So let's say I want to name new point 2. I'm going to go down to the select where there's the drop down. I'm going to click new point 2, and now I'm going to name it. My go-to is always to name them dog parks. And you also have the ability to describe that specific location. Now, if you want to erase a location, let's say I want to erase this one, new point 1. I'm going to select new point 1, and then I'm going to click on this trash can button to delete that. So that's how you delete a specific location on the map. So now we know how to draw a community of interest geography. We've added some locations. We know how to erase things. I'm going to go to the data layers to show what other information you have. So again, you don't need additional census data or any additional data to submit a community of interest, but if you'd like some more information, you go to the data layers tab and then also the evaluation tab. So you have the ability to number your districts if you like. You can also look at the demographics, population by race, and then also the citizen voting age population. So to show the population, you click on show population. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we have a better view. And then you can click on a specific ethnic or racial group to kind of see where that group is in the city. We also have the citizen voting age population data, and this is the data set that we would utilize if we were drawing any Section 2 Voting Rights Act districts. Again, we will talk with legal counsel if we are directed to do so. And this is the data set that is also out of the Census Bureau and counts every person who is 18 years or older. It's not based on anything besides your age. So not citizenship, residency, or any of that. It's just on folks who are over the age of 18 of voting age in your city. And again, you have the ability to look at that based on race. If you want to draw or look at a district or a specific kind of area to create a community of interest, you can create something that's also called a coalition builder or a coalition district, where you can click on any number of these racial groups, and then you go back to show population variable and click on the coalition population. And you also can look at that using the CVAP by clicking coalition citizen voting age population. So those some additional data that you can look at on the Data Layers tab. The Evaluation tab will give you the population of your communities that you've drawn, and also the population of the city of Santa Ana. So you can see those based on what you've named them. So we see it change. And it's all looking at the total numbers of the city against what you have created. Again, I can't stress enough that you don't need additional census data to create a community of interest or submit a community of interest. This is just information here for you to look at. You can also do that based on the citizen voting age population. Okay, so let's say you are ready to submit your map or to save it as a draft. If you want to work on this a little bit later, or again, you're ready to submit it, you click on the Save button at the top right. And the best way to submit your map to the city and to ensure that we can all look at it and that it is added to that homepage gallery that we saw is to click Share to Gallery. So we have the button that is click Share Now, and we can click on this green button that says Share to Gallery. If you'd like to name your plan, you can do so in the team or plan name, but it's not necessary to give a name to the plan. Every plan will get a specific unique ID number, and that's the number that we will be referencing when we talk to council about the plans. If you'd like to save it as a work in progress, you can do so by clicking Work in Progress and then saving as a draft. Again, you have the ability to name it as well. You can also share your specific map if you don't want to save it as a draft, or if you don't want to add it to the gallery. You can copy and paste the specific URL link to the map and share it that way. But again, the best way to ensure that your map will be considered and looked at by the council is to share it to the gallery. You can also, and the last button is on the top right-hand corner, which will allow you the ability to print your map as a PDF or to download it to look at it in another mapping software. So if you want to look at your map in Maptitude or Esri software, you can do so by downloading it as a GeoJSON, shapefile, or a CSV. So that's the community of interest tool. So I'm going to go back to the home page just by clicking back. Again, I'm not saving this map. And it's going to take me back to the home page. Another thing to note is that if you would like to edit one of these maps that are already in here, you can click on them and edit them, but you would just have to rename them and resave them, and then they'd be added as another submission. So if you, after submitting a map, would like to change it and don't want to work from scratch, you do have the ability to do so in any plans that have been officially submitted or in the draft plans. But I want to create or start from scratch. So I'm going to go and click on the purple button now that says Santa Ana 6 council districts built out of 2020 blocks. And right away, we're going to see some differences. We see that the background is different. It is more of a muted gray, but you still have the ability to see all of the streets. And then when you zoom in, things will still be named, just the color is different. We also don't have the search bar anymore, but we do have the zoom in, zoom out button, and the button to orient your map north. We still have all the similar buttons and similar tabs, but there will be some differences. The pan tool works the same. The paintbrush tool, will notice that we only have the ability to create 6 ward boundaries. And also we have this square with a line down the middle that gives us some additional numbers. So I'll go through that in a little bit. Oh no, we'll do that now because we know what these other buttons do. So to start drawing a word boundary, it's really similar to the community of interest tool, but how we know that we are on a specific color is the color that you're on will be a circle and all the rest of them will be squares. So right now I'm going to start drawing a blue word boundary, and this bar will update in real time the population that you are adding to that ward boundary. I'm going to click on yellow just to add a couple of other ones. So the numbers of note here are the kind of amount of census blocks or population that you're putting in your boundary, the ideal number. So this number, 51,898.83, is the number that if we were to take the 2020 census data for the city of Santa Ana and split it exactly into 6 ward boundaries, you would have 51,898 people in each ward boundary. However, the city has an allowable buffer or difference of 10%, and that is based on the total plan deviation. So what that means is that the council can, if they choose to have a district that has a high population and low population, that is 10% difference. So you don't necessarily have to create districts of equal size. Again, the first criteria says relatively equal size. If you are looking to submit a full draft plan, you want to look at this unassigned population and try to make it as close to 0 as possible, which means that you've added all of the census blocks that are in the city. A districtor only gives the max population deviation, so it doesn't give you the total plan deviation. So we will look at the draft plans and give the council the total plan deviation when we are discussing all of these maps. So I'm going to create another ward boundary just to add some color so that we can look at the other tabs. Again, this is just for example purposes. So it does allow you to go over the line. It'll just continue to give you that total population number that you placed in that ward boundary. So there is the data layers tab. Oh, I just saw there's another button, a highlight unassigned areas. So it will let you know which are the areas that have not been assigned if you're looking to, again, submit a full plan. The data layers tab has the same data that we saw in the community of interest map. It'll allow you to paint the numbers. You can look at the population by race. So again, it can be a factor, but it can't be the predominant factor in drawing a district, again, unless we are given direction from legal counsel to draw Voting Rights Act Section 2 districts. So you have the ability to look at all this information. Again, you can draw a coalition builder district to click on multiple of the ethnicities and draw one. And then the evaluation tab where you can look at your district, your ward boundaries that you've created and compare them to different racial and ethnic groups. So you can look at Hispanic, Asian, white, Black, and the coalition population, and it will give you the percentage of each of those in your specific ward boundary. And the buttons to save are the same. So you can click on the save button to share your map to the gallery now, to save it as a draft, or to copy the URL link. And then you can also print your map as a PDF or download it and look at it on another mapping software. And these maps, once you submit them to the gallery or as a draft, will be updated in real time, and then will be added to the homepage gallery of the city of Santa Ana. So I'm gonna, that's the Districtor demo. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and hand it back to Daisy and staff to see if we have any questions from the audience.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, just a quick question. In order to submit a community map for consideration, do we have to use the Districtor tool, or can we just directly submit it since, you know, at least for us specifically, we're working already with other software like map to just use the data for consideration?
Did you hear the question, Sophia?
No, can you please repeat it?
Oh, she was asking if we can utilize another mapping tool, like Maptitude, is that the one you said? Maptitude, can they submit it in another method if they've already started working on another mapping tool instead of Districtor? Can you import that into Districtor? I know you can export it.
Yeah, that's a really wonderful question. So the The answer is no, you don't need to only use Districtor to submit a map. This is just the tool that the city has decided to go with to allow it as a public tool for folks to use. However, if you submit a map on a piece of paper, if you submit a map using another mapping software or with the placemat, we will take all of those and consider them and create data packets for all of them. We will not be drawing the maps in Districtor. We'll be taking any shape files or other maps that we receive and then working on them on our internal software. We actually use Maptitude as our internal software when we're drafting plans, but definitely any maps in any form will be considered, will be looked at, and will be a part of the public record.
Thank you.
Thank you. I did want to bring up one other notation. The documentation we provided to you, one of them is the actual PowerPoint that I went over today. I do want to note that on slide number 28, the public hearing is the only page that is changed. I do want to identify specifically that November 15th is the day before the Tuesday, which is listed on your slide 28. So on slide 28, on what's printed, it says November 16th, Tuesday at 7. I want to make sure you're aware that this is a special meeting, November 15th, Monday at 5 p.m. And then also December 6th is the other change. Instead of December 7th, which is what you have printed on your slide 28, it should be December 6th, 5 p.m. So I just want to make sure those are the two changes that we did not have an opportunity to reprint, but I want to make sure that you're aware of. And again, I encourage you to take packets. So if you feel that you want to provide this to residents that weren't able to come today, and you can pass this out, I would just note that those are the only two changes. Are there any other questions that I can answer, or Sophia? Okay, I think that is all. Thank you so much, Sophia, for joining us this morning. And we will connect after.
Of course.
We'll have everything updated, especially the video that actually we recorded today. It will be also part of our public portal. We will place that link on there. We should have everything in by Monday.
Okay. And I do have an answer to that previous question about posting time. So it is 3 to 5 days prior to whatever the posting date is for the next meeting. So we have a meeting on whatever meeting we have. If someone submits a map like a day before the meeting or day of the meeting, it won't necessarily be discussed during that meeting, but it will be discussed at the following meeting. So again, I don't remember what the posting date is for the city of Santa Ana, but it will be, we will need a couple of days to kind of create the data packet and make sure that it's in the presentation.
So if we're just following that, Sophia, for the city council, their final map that will be presented to them, at least the way it's scheduled right now, is January 18th, which is because the first meeting in January, it has been traditionally canceled. So it'll be a dark Tuesday, essentially. So the following Tuesday that council will meet as a regularly scheduled meeting will be January 18th. So since that is going to have the final map approval, will that be part? Will that, if there's any other draft maps submitted after December 6th, would that be also added to that final map as an option for council to at least be aware of that submittal?
So under the Fair Maps Act, the final plan that will be voted on, an up or down vote, has to be made public and on the website 7 days prior to the meeting. And so there can't be any changes to what's being discussed, with like a smaller window of time. So the council, I think, as you said, Daisy, has the ability to push back their their meeting dates or to talk about it, but there is as we go through the process to finalize a plan, we'll have a couple meetings to talk about draft plans. And then the council will eventually elevate a plan as their final plan to have discussion on. And then when they have the meeting to vote up or down, there can't be any changes to the agenda or to the maps 7 days prior. If they make an amendment to the map in the final meeting, then they will have to have another meeting to then vote up or down on that final map. So in other words, the meeting where they will be discussing and voting an up or down vote on the final map, they can't make any changes to that map. And again, there is that posting requirement in the Fair Maps Act of 7 days.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, and we will discuss that during the when we talk about when we're transitioning out of the community of interest kind of community workshop phases and the process that we will take from taking community of interest to creating draft maps. And we will talk about what that process looks like. And then again, how we will finally get a final plan. So we know we're transitioning out of the community workshops to talking about draft maps. But it's also important to note that you are able to give comments, submit maps, submit community of interest maps throughout the entire process. It doesn't necessarily stop after this community meeting.
Thank you so much. Are there any other questions? Okay, I think we're good. Did you have any virtual meeting? Okay, thank you. So
Thank you
so much for joining us, Sophia. Have a great rest of your weekend. I appreciate you all coming. Again, I want to encourage you to take as many packets as you want. Help yourself to coffee. We have water, snacks. Please help yourself.